The desensitization to antibiotics is a serious issue. The leading cause to the desensitization to antibiotics is the misuse and overuse of antibiotics. This could be solved by educational programs aimed to teach people the correct usages of antibiotics. Several lines of evidence suggest that educational programs aimed at clinicians and patients can increase the knowledge and awareness of the patient and decrease the frequency of the clinician inappropriately prescribing an antibiotic. The desensitization to antibiotics occurs when an antibiotic is overused. It kills off the majority of the bacteria, but the stronger bacteria survive and can develop a resistant gene so that the antibiotic use is no longer effective. The plasmids on which the resistant gene is stored in bacteria can also have pumps to pump out the antibiotics, or an enzyme to degrade the antibiotic, or an enzyme to alter the antibiotic. So all three of these options make the antibiotic useless, and that's how the bacteria is resistant to antibiotics. And I have a picture to show you. This is the plasma with the resistant gene on it. Here's one enzyme, and it shows you how the antibiotic is useless, another enzyme, and here's the pump, and it just pumps the antibiotic right back out so the bacteria isn't affected by the antibiotic, and it can still go on living, and it's not affected by the antibiotic. The desensitization to antibiotics has been around for a while. It's not a new concept. Sir Alexander Fleming, who created penicillin in the 1920s, forewarned us about the desensitization to antibiotics, saying that the overuse of antibiotics can lead to resistant forms being created and more serious illnesses, and that bacteria can easily transfer their resistant genes. In fact, the earliest cases of desensitization to antibiotics was reported in the 1930s and 40s when Staphylococcus became resistant to penicillin and another antibiotic. So that just shows that the desensitization to antibiotics can occur very quickly. It only took 10 years for a bacteria to become resistant to penicillin. So the use of antibiotics needs to be monitored, and educational programs can help teach people how to properly use antibiotics. Another case of antibiotics being used inappropriately is in Asia. A brothel in Asia decided to take preventative measures and administer penicillin to their women in order to prevent them from contracting gonorrhea. This was a good idea in theory, but didn't turn out too great. The women, in fact, kind of created a strand of gonorrhea that was resistant to penicillin, and that's because they took the antibiotic when it wasn't needed, so the majority of the bacteria was killed off, and the bacteria that wasn't developed a resistant gene to the penicillin and created a strand of resistant gonorrhea. So gonorrhea is treated with a stronger, different antibiotic now. So that just shows that antibiotics need to be taken when they're needed and not just to take them. Most people don't know that antibiotics don't treat colds, flus, or viruses, and when you take them, it's contributing to the desensitization to antibiotics. You're causing much more harm than good. Your antibiotic is not going to help you feel better. It's not going to help you get over your cold faster. And when you demand that your doctor prescribe you an antibiotic, it's not going to help, and you're just making the problem worse. A study was done to see whether the consumption of antibiotics affects the rate of desensitization, and they found that there's a proportional relationship. That means that the more antibiotics that are consumed, the higher the rate of desensitization to antibiotics. Conversely, you can interpret that to mean that the less antibiotics that are consumed, the lower the rate of desensitization to antibiotics. So, with educational programs, we can teach people when to use antibiotics and what antibiotics are effective against, and slow down the rate of desensitization to antibiotics and help save antibiotics.